is Myra.
And I'm Sochil, and this is Besties in Business, B2B TV. And I'm very, very excited today because we have Jennifer Kass, and I stalked her on Instagram. And essentially asked her to come. She is nothing but love pioneer, and I thought it would be great for us to talk not just about your evolution into your business of mentoring and coaching, but also generally speaking about the possibility about getting free of a lot of our own blocks to our own abilities, and to take ourselves further and closer to where we'd like to be. So Jennifer started out in editorial, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her journey, and I can't wait to hear.
I'd say I sort of started pioneering my path 10 years ago when I left Colorado to come to New York City, and I had maybe 3 people I knew here, and I didn't have a job or a place to live, and I had only been here like once or twice, very briefly.
Yeah.
So it was a really big change and a leap of faith. And I just knew I had to be here, so I did it. So I was in the Condé Nast building for almost 5 years.
Oh, wow.
And pretty soon I realized that there was something else that I had to do in the world. I noticed a lot of the content in the magazine wasn't really giving a lot of answers and solutions to challenges that I was thinking about and that I saw women on this planet facing and that my friends were experiencing. So there was a bigger conversation that I wanted to have.
So when you left, did you leave and immediately start? Like, what did you do once you did leave the magazine?
So it was sort of a progression. I mean, you know, part of what we'll get into, which is the transformation process, and this, you know, a spiritual awakening, which is moving from living in fear to living in love, right? So I was living in fear. So I was really anxious all the time, and I was stuck and trapped in my own fears and my own limiting beliefs about what I thought was possible in the world, what I thought was possible for me. What I do now didn't exist.
Right.
I mean, so I never could have figured it out, right? So it was this very, it was a process that slowly unfolded. And since I left the magazine, it's been a 5-year evolution in my work with my clients and with my mission on the planet. But when I was at the magazine, the seed was planted when I started hearing about a nutrition program, and there was nothing else going on back then. So it was sort of the gateway to this much larger thing that I was going to do, but it was a way for me to say, oh, I'm going to leave my job now because I'm doing this, rather than just leaving. You know, so that was how I started my business initially.
When did you start taking on kind of clients, or was that an evolving?
I did it right away. That was something that it came very naturally for me, and it's something I was really meant to be doing, and I love doing it now. I know that it's not something that I won't always be able to work with clients one-on-one, but it's perfect for right now, and I love doing that right now. So, you know, that's the business aspect, right? And that's what we'll be talking about today. But then there's the larger mission and my larger life purpose, which is it's going to just be putting out content, putting out the message. And, you know, my mission is to awaken as many willing hearts and minds as possible. So that will be through my books and speaking and, you know,
and
as everything evolves.
launched a podcast recently.
And so, so I'm doing that right now with the podcast, which is really fun. And then a daily newsletter, my daily Love Pioneer newsletter, actually. And then, of course, sharing on the social media. I love everyone over there, and I love that you guys are following along.
It's awesome because, you know, and I think it's been cool to see it become a place where you can get a little bit more, take a pause, even though like the whole thing is this idea of you just scrolling, but one of the things that I kind of love is that you can take this pause and actually stop and think. What type of work do you feel that most people can do that is like a simple start in a daily practice to get more in touch with those blocks and sort of, you know,
well, I would say there's so many different ways to say this, and obviously I say it every day in sort of a different way, but One thing that's been coming to me lately that my clients have been finding really helpful is that you sort of look at it like a three-part system. There's the prayer, there's meditation, and there is showing up for the assignments that come in throughout the day. So that means we have to create our daily spiritual practice, which is all of the above.
Right.
And so meditation looks like, sitting for, maybe you can start for 5 minutes a day, maybe that expands to 10, and then 20 is when the mind really sort of begins to get quiet and you can go deeper. And maybe that takes a few months to get there. Maybe you do it in a week, whatever. And then you might find that you're sitting for an hour or, twice a day for an hour. But beginning with a meditation in the morning is helpful because you connect with yourself rather than that fear-based mental chatter that goes on that makes you act from that place of fear, which is people-pleasing or getting that email and feeling like you're a victim of something when, like, really you have all the power in that situation, and
Right.
you don't have to, you don't have to feel that way. And then prayer looks like asking for guidance, making that connection, being open and willing to receiving guidance from your higher self, from your inner guide, from your own spirit, rather than just this mind that always wants to figure everything out, and the ego that's always going to tell you fear-based stories and lack and limitation. And so prayer is something that happens in meditation, where I include the prayer and intention for meditation in my daily posts. Mm-hmm. But you can also use it throughout the day when you're witnessing your fear-based mind come in. You can say, "Help me see this differently." You can say, "I surrender this fear. I don't need it to control my life right now." And then the spiritual assignments that come in, which is you get that email. What am I going to do? How am I going to show up here? And that's when the real, the rubber hits the road, because you're taking those tools and you're actually applying them to your life in all these different situations that we have.
When you started your business, what was your intention? How did that look, and how did it change once it became profitable, or how did it become profitable?
And I guess, how did you realize that you had your own blocks to still work through, right?
I realized that because I hit massive rock bottoms.
Okay.
I have extreme lessons.
Yeah.
So, and again, my clients, they're not meeting me on this rock bottom level. And a lot of my readers have actually been doing the inner work for a while, or even if you're new to the path, you're not really, even clients who are getting divorced or having really big life changes, they're still not really at rock bottom. So I learned through very extreme lessons, and that's how I realized that something needed to change, and that's how I became willing to get on my spiritual path, willing to do things differently. So what that looked like was I left my job at the magazine and then started the business, but the business wasn't actually, it was not anywhere close to being sustainable.
Right.
And I, at the same time, had a breakup. So I hit a rock bottom in the breakup, and then that's when I sort of cracked open, and that's when I wasn't willing before to look at my fears and look at my blocks. I had to really hit bottom to actually do the work, where, again, most people, they'll do the work, they're willing, and they don't have to. These are wake-up calls.
Right.
So if we're not listening, we get really harsh wake-up calls. So I get really harsh ones, and that's how I learned and grew. And that was a painful way to learn and grow, but it gave me my material.
Right.
And it really showed me the power of this work, because I would go from very low to really high, and I've been able to go higher and higher after each one of those bottoms. So the first one was the relationship. So that was my first bottom. So I found my spiritual path. Now, there was a piece of me that was still not really believing that I could create anything I wanted. There was still that it's victim consciousness. It's this idea that we're not actually creating our own reality, and that we're somehow at the mercy of external circumstances. Right. So I wasn't actually, I wasn't taking the actions that I needed to in my business. And so let's just rewind. So you have, so I created a successful, thriving practice, and the way I did that was by sharing my gifts and my passions with the world. And the way I did that was clearing the blocks. Now, when I didn't clear the blocks, I was not sharing any, I wasn't writing and putting my message out, and I was completely blocked in my business.
Right.
So, I mean, I fell again. I had another rock bottom, and I basically lost everything a couple years ago and had to start over again. And that's what shook it out of me. It really shook out of me any idea that I couldn't create what I wanted to. So, you know, within 2 months, everything. So that's how my business became thriving, was, you know, I hit hard, looked at my stuff again, realized, oh my God, I'm still doing that thing I do.
Right, because like it's kind of, I just had this conversation with a friend of ours, like if it doesn't feel like it's coming from an authentically powerful place, like you can't, it's hard to sell it, right?
Well,
like,
I was always authentic.
Yeah.
I was always authentic, but I wasn't writing.
Right.
And so when I was like, I had nothing, I had to give everything away. I didn't have $500 for storage. I had nothing, and I was like, fully surrendered now, then my next level of surrender.
Yeah.
Again, I'm learning through this. I'm learning what it means to surrender. I'm learning what it means to release attachment to things and whatever, and my plan and how I think it should be. And from that place of surrender, I was able to be guided to my next best actions, because I wasn't being the princess anymore waiting to be saved.
Right.
So I wrote an article. It was a simple action.
Yeah.
I did a couple things, and from that, everything just burst into fruition.
Yeah. How do you typically work with your clients now, like your one-on-one clients, and how many do you manage? Like, what's that relationship kind of like for you? Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't really go over 20 at a time, and it's a 6-month program, so that's really an amazing container to create real transformation and to integrate these tools and ideas in a real way. So it's interesting, because studies show that 6 months is the period it takes to create sustainable change. So it's sort of like a lot happens, and they might get engaged or divorced or married, seasons change, they move. Lots happens in that time, you know? So they have this support and guidance through their life process, but then it's a spiritual transformation. So they're, you know, a lot of them might have read a lot of the books already, or they might have been on their path for a while, or maybe they're just going through a really big transition right now, or they just know that there's more and they need to get to the next level. Like, but they know fear is blocking them, so they're not, you know, they're at a job that still isn't totally aligned, but they know there's something else, or the relationship, something's off.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they're able to receive that support and guidance, and like actionables, you know. It's not just a conversation, but it's all right, so here's how you're going to show up for this week, and here's what you can do, so they can create real change, you know, each week. But these are spiritual tools, so the change it's like quantum leaps.
Right.
I mean, it's like leaps and bounds with just very small tools, with very small but simple but profound tools and ideas. And again, we know a lot of these things, like we know we should be meditating, or we know that we need to choose love, but we don't, you know, we don't always know what exactly that means or what that looks like, or we're not doing it. So so it helps to have, it's a catalyst. It's a catalyst for where you're going. We all, happiness and abundance and peace and being of service in the world, it's our divine birthright, it's our purpose. And so everybody's going to get there, but this type of work is a catalyst for that, you know, so you don't have to spend, you know, 5 years or 10 years sort of going through the same patterns.
Right. Oh my gosh, it's like liberating. Yeah, I know.
What do you feel, you know, with your clients, what is the biggest challenge? Like, do you see things sort of that a lot of people have, like, you know, blocks that the majority of people are trying to push
Fear of not
through?
being good enough.
Fear of not being good enough. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, because then that affects how they show up in their relationships. They won't create healthy boundaries, or they'll settle and they'll put up for stuff.
Yeah.
They'll put up with stuff, or they'll
do too much.
Or they do too much, or they give too much.
Or they don't show up at all. Like,
Right.
so there's like a fear of failure in some weird way. Like, so you're there, but you're not really showing up, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, again, like, I mean, as you guys
Yeah.
know, you are showing up, right? So they're pretty high achievers, so they're
Yeah,
showing up,
right,
and
right.
they're ready, and they're
Yeah.
ready and willing to do the work, and so it's so exciting and
Yeah.
it's so inspiring working with them because they're so amazing.
Thank you so
so much.
much. And you can, or your awesome Instagrams are at Jennifer Kass, Kass, and podcast. And we're so appreciative of your time. And
Thank you so much.
yes, and #LovePioneers. So thank you.